folks. So we'll get started. My name is Enrique Rodriguez. Been with the Building Standards Commission for 3 years. Prior to that, I worked at the Department of General Services for 11 years in their architecture department doing design, state facilities. Thank you for having us here. Karen and Susan, thank you for inviting us over. Really appreciate it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get into the mandatory non-residential requirements for Cal Green. And with this is going to be, it's basically mainly highlighting what the changes are via this supplement that's going to become effective July 1 of 2012. I'm assuming most of you are familiar with Cal Green. It's been around for several years now. So this is the overview. Non-residential exists in Cal Green in Chapter 5, and when you look at the setup of Cal Green, it's very similar to what you might see in other, let's say, point-rated systems out there. There's only so many ways we could define terms. Categories, planning and design. This is what I'll be talking about. Energy efficiency, once again, this is all part of the Energy Commission's authority, so what we do is just make a reference to that. Then I would talk about water efficiency and conservation, material conservation and resource efficiency, and then environmental quality, and then lastly, I'll be talking about a new division that we created for this via this supplement, which is Division 5.7, where we address additions and alterations. Okay, so our first code provision is in this storm soil loss prevention plan. Really, the only changes to there really weren't there's no changes to the stormwater water pollution plan, other than what you'll see here is that we have an asterisk, and this asterisk is what really anything with an asterisk is now going to apply to that Division 5.7. For additions and alterations. So keep your eye out for anything with an asterisk. And assuming if your project meets the criteria that Mike was talking about, whether if it's a 2,000 square foot addition, it'll trigger 5.7, or if it's a, let's say an alteration of over $500,000, then these provisions come into play, and those asterisks are the minimum requirements.
Also, just to make note quickly too that one of the strikeouts in that section was to remove the NPDES reference. Those were the references that were used. There was a lot of feedback from local jurisdictions saying they were having difficulty with that. So the Housing and Community Development Agency developed some best management practices to accomplish the same task. And so we removed the reference to the permitting issue for NPDES, and have added, in conjunction with HCD, the best management practices to that. So that's one of the other tweaks to that requirement.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Yeah, certainly our intent was not to require a state permit for projects 1 acre or less. Bicycle parking, the only modification to this is in 2010, which is you can see on the left-hand column, the 2010 code on the left-hand column, which is currently what's enforceable now. We had a reference to UC Davis for requirements on bicycle parking. At their request, we removed it. So that's the only change that you'll see there. Designated parking, we basically made some clarifications and defined what a clean air vehicle is at the request of that ARB. Simple editorial change on that. Now a new one, so light pollution reduction, in the 2010 it was moved out as an emergency and was moved as a voluntary measure. For the supplement, it got moved back as mandatory, but really it was modified, and really it was modified to make it do a measurable standard, so building departments could actually measure light pollution reduction. So that what we do now is we're referencing the Illumination Engineers Society for bug ratings, and so that you use that along with the Energy Commission's lighting level requirements, and that's how you will comply. Under grading and paving, basically what we did here is we aligned with HCD for grading and paving, and it basically talked about, you know, really defined, and I think made it simpler to comply with for swales and drainage and water retention ponds and whatnot, but really aligning with HCD's requirements.
One note too on top of that, HCD was talking about it yesterday, and the way they presented it was, in general terms, we've all seen the site plan that comes in with the building located and arrows pointing away from the building as you go around, basically indicating the water to run away from the building. And we all understand that that's the requirement. What they've done is they've upped the level a little bit, and they said that's not going to be acceptable. You have to actually identify how you're going to manage that water. And so that's what those best management practices are intended to do, is give you options, but allow you or require you to actually show something on the plan as to how you're going to manage that water on site. So we thought that was a good idea, and so we aligned with HCD's provisions on that one as well.
Thank you, Mike. So now we get to this energy efficiency. Like I said before, energy efficiency standards are under the authority of the Energy Commission. So here we just make a reference to the Energy Code. The change to separate water metering or sub-metering of devices. What we did here is we made some exceptions for subsystems. For example, makeup water for cooling towers, makeup water for evaporative coolers, and then steam and hot water boiler subsystem requirements. Additionally, for the 20% reduction of indoor water use, we clarified the performance and prescriptive standards. And what we did here is we modified the footnotes and the tables on the water use, and basically now we're saying is go to the plumbing code for your occupant load calculation. So before it wasn't referring to the plumbing code. So we made a reference to that, and we've added some footnotes to give some allowances. For example, kitchen water faucets can be temporarily increase the water flow for pot filling, things like that. We've also added a requirement where, let's say you don't have compliant faucets, where you can use aerators. They're defined in here, so what type they are, to kind of get us to meet that requirement of trying to reduce our 20% indoor water use. Under water budget, basically there was no change to that requirement to establish a water budget. Separate sub-meters and outdoor potable water use, we had some minor modifications, mainly editorial. Same thing with weather, soil, moisture-based irrigation controllers, minor editorial clarifications. This supplement really didn't try to change a whole lot, like Mike has said, at least on the non-residential component.
And, real quick on the outdoor potable water use, really the minor change there was to clarify the scoping section. It talks about in the code right now, areas, landscape areas between 1,000 and 5,000 square feet. The question came up, well, does that include 1,005, or if you go to 5,000? So what was the clarification? So we went in and said at least 1,000 and not more than 5,000. So that simple change, but it clarified the intent. And the same thing was done, I believe it was being done on the 1,000 to 2,500 square foot requirement, where it's saying at least 1,000 and not more than 2,500. So minor change, but significant impact on the way you address those provisions.
Yes, question?
You said that I'm reading it, temporarily increased flow at a kitchen faucet to 2.2.
Right.
What's your definition of temporarily?
Well, here's how it works, and I know this because we talked about this yesterday with HCD. The manufacturers of kitchen faucets, and this really stems more from a commercial application, but it's residential too. There was concerns with the slow or the lower flow rate that you're really not saving a lot because the amount of time it takes to fill the spot, you know, it ends up not saving as much. So, and it takes time, you know, you're using a lot of time waiting for this thing to fill at this lower flow rate. So the manufacturer said, well, we can provide a 2-flow rate fixture. So it flows at 1.5, and then when you need the increase, you push a button and it flows at 2.5. And we said, well, that's fine, but the default has to be the lower side. So they designed a fixture that when you turn it on, it runs at the lower rate. If you need to fill a pot or have some other vessel, you push the button and it increases flow rate for the fill. When you shut the water off and you turn it back on again, it defaults back to the initial lower flow. And that was one way to accomplish that and to allow restaurants and facilities like that to not be hampered by a trickle of a flow for filling a large vessel. That was the intent.
Thank you, Mike.
Sure.
Appreciate that.
No problem. New information.
we're tag teaming this, as you can tell. This is fantastic. So anyway, also a minor clarification on the weather and soil moisture based irrigation controllers. There are total changes there. The same thing with extra weather protection. It's already covered in Title 24 local ordinance. Here we had absolutely no change other than now this provision here is going to be required for additions and alterations. Designed for moisture control, sprinklers and entries and openings. This one, once again, there was no change other than now it's required for additions and alterations. A requirement for construction waste reduction of 50% from landfill. Once again, there is no change. But now under our waste management plan requirement, we've made some exceptions, and I think to make it easier to comply. And what we've added is if a waste management company can certify your a plan, you can use that proof from the waste management company. We also added a provision for, or an allowance for, let's say you're doing for construction waste stream reduction. So let's say you're doing, let's see, a structure that's been prefabbed at the factory. You're going to get that credit because you've already basically saved that. That's already the diversion of 50% has already been done pretty much at the factory. So you get a credit for that.
Related to that, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
But I just, again, in yesterday's presentation, they talked about the waste stream, and what was brought up was this program that used to cost money. Now it's free. They've managed to get some advertising, so now it's a free tool, and it's called Green Halo. And it's a tool for local jurisdictions to work with the haulers and the recycling groups, as well as the contractors and their tickets and how they're going to track the materials, how they verify the recycled amounts, how do you certify all this, how do we know other than somebody saying, hey, yeah, we recycled this amount. So this Green Halo is all electronic, it's online, the building departments can utilize it, you can sign on as a contractor, and you do all your documentation through this site. And so I'd encourage anybody to go look at it. We were hesitant to really toot the horn of Green Halo, if you will, earlier, because they originally were a pay site. So you had to pay to get that certification, that process, and local jurisdictions were having to incur a new line item on your budget to accept this. Well, they weren't getting the kind of exposure they were hoping for, so they went through the process of getting some advertisers to support them, and so that allowed them to then pull the fee away, and so now they're free. So it's something you can go online, register with them, and then start using that through your local system. Yes?
Green Halo is free to jurisdictions or free to everyone?
As far as I know, it's free to everybody.
It was, for a long time, it was free to the jurisdictions. Within the past year, they've been hitting us hard. But it's still a cost to contractors or whoever.
You'd have to
you like.
check with them. From what I heard yesterday, they've gotten this advertising segment fit in, so you have some banners and some advertising on the site now that you didn't have before. And from what I understood, the way it was explained is it's free and it's a tool for everybody to use, and they're going to utilize that, those advertising dollars to keep themselves supported. So.
Yeah, we closed that about a month ago because one of the
So it is true that they're all free now?
Even the contractors?
yes,
it's a really amazingly well put together tool. When I first saw it a couple of years ago, I think it was, I don't remember the jurisdiction, an East Bay jurisdiction was using it, and they were really excited about it, and they were paying for it at the time. So now that it's free, I think it's really a good tool. So something worth checking out anyway. It's going to help on that waste reduction process.
Thank you, Mike. We're getting information hot off the press here. So
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mike. So I'm going to move on. We have in the code, we have exceptions for isolated job sites. There is no change to that. We're still allowing, making an allowance for local jurisdictions to make that determination when you're in these isolated job sites and you don't have, let's say, a recycling facility nearby or a MRF facility. Still allowing that jurisdiction to make the call. Recycle and reuse of 100% of land clearing debris. Made some exceptions there that obviously can't be contaminated soil. So, you know, it's only if it's non-contaminated soil that you recycle 100% of it. Under building maintenance and operation, recycling by occupants, no change to that. Now that it's going to be required for additions and alterations. Now we get to what we call the big elephant in the room for CalGreen, and it's this commissioning requirement, and this is for brand new buildings that are 10,000 square feet or more. And as you can see, we had some minor clarifications. We made some exceptions for dry storage warehouses. Let's see what else. We had exceptions for dry. What to see here. So basically, we had exceptions for dry storage warehouses of any size in areas under 10,000 square feet that were used for offices and other conditioned accessory spaces within that storage warehouse. We realized that it doesn't make sense to, you know, require commissioning on a warehouse, so we made some exceptions there. And as you can see here from that underline and strikeout, basically just did some editorial. We added the word operating systems and got rid of components when it came to that provision there. But basically, the owner's project requirements, you know, it's what's good about, I guess, the only the commission, you know, this commissioning really is going to be based on this OPR. The owner and owner's representative is really going to set how that building is going to get commissioned. So, you know, and that will vary from project to project and client. And so there might be some clients who really want an extensive full commissioning, and their OPR is really going to set the base for what that commissioning of that building is going to be. And so we got the owner's project requirements, sets the parameters for the system that's going to be commissioned and the requirements. And your basis of design is basically going to define how you're going to meet the project requirements. But it's pretty extensive. The only good thing I could say that is going to help in this commissioning, which is pretty complicated, we created a commissioning guide in California, and now we made that commissioning guide as an appendix, which will be Appendix A6 that Mike talked about. It's a voluntary appendix chapter, but what it is really, we set the standard for commissioning that really take these requirements in the code, but really then defines them on, you know, what is owner's project requirements, what's the BOD, what are the minimum systems that need to be commissioned. And it's in here. We also talk about the intent. We talk about what happens at plan intake, you know, what the plan checker is going to look for, you know, the inspector. And then we also talk about, and we show a lot of self-certification forms for BOD. You know, so we have a form on owner's project requirements. We have a self-certification form for basis of design. And so all of these components here we've actually developed self-certification forms that you can check and have to be signed by the contractor, the commissioning agent, and then the building department is going to, you know, look at here and use this as a guide to reviewing the commissioning plan. So it really is it's great for jurisdictions that don't have a plan in place in terms of how they review commissioning. It really sets the standard for those jurisdictions. Now, this doesn't have to be adopted as an appendix chapter. I mean, it can be voluntarily used, and you can go onto our website and show at the end where to go. You can download the whole commissioning guide. We can provide that commissioning guide in a Word document, so building officials and cities can modify, customize, put their city logo or whatnot, and really use it as a tool to check for the commission requirements in Calgary. Once again, this is just basically in the owner's projects requirements. You know, there are minimums that you have to include, and these are basically, you have to include environmental sustainability goals, energy efficiency goals, indoor environmental quality requirements, project program. We talk about equipment systems and expectations, you know, O&M manuals, and, personnel and expectations, and all of those items are clearly defined in this guide. Basis of design. Once again, these are the minimum items you have to include. We talk about heating, indoor lighting, water heating systems, renewable energy systems, landscape, and water reuse. Now, from here, as we kind of mentioned earlier, Energy Commission is going to be pulling some of those back away from this commissioning requirement and putting them in their basically in their you know, Part 6 energy code. Minor editorial changes. Yes.
Question. So, I haven't been a part of the commissioning or noticed much about it.
Yeah.
But I remember a few years back when this all first came out, I was told really the only thing that you ever needed to submit formally was a commissioning report. All the other stuff should just be done. And I know jurisdictions are handling this differently from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, checklists, and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
But is that true? So the report, you have to submit a report, a commission report, for review to the local jurisdiction?
Well, you have to submit. In the commissioner report, there's all these subcategories that have to be addressed. This VOD is part of the commissioner report. So the commissioning report is really the whole thing. These are the requirements within it.
One
Does
of
that make
the
sense?
clarifications in the code, minor, but they have these separate sections within the commissioning, basis of design, OPR, and these different groups. Yeah, commissioning plan, they're all separate and had a lot of duplicative information. And one of the changes made in the supplement was to put those all together into one section, so it's more apparent that this is all part of the bigger picture of the commissioning plan. Minor change, but in the way you use it, it made more sense. And then I think they removed some confusing language. There was a sentence removed from it, again, kind of making it more clear as to how it applies. It was a little ambiguous language that didn't need to be there, so it was removed to help enforcement side.
So the documentation is in Appendix 6. Is there anything in there that would require less of things to be submitted or reviewed at all, or is it just, because I sort of see it as it's almost like if the design team is just checking boxes and they're signing their name to it, that's not enough, I think, for.
No, and it isn't. It isn't. I mean, there's all the documentation that accompanies those self-certifications. I mean, they're attesting that those items are included. So if you read the self-certification form, it says these following items or documents are included in, let's say, in the BOD. They check what's included, and then the building department's going to say, well, did you include that item, you know, all those items. So, but there's definitely minimums, and the systems that get commissioned, like these systems, you have to address these in the BOD. They have to be included. They're not optional. So, yeah, that's certainly that's a good question.
But this documentation goes to the building owner or rep, not necessarily the building department. It specifically talks to, this report shall be provided to the owner or representative. So I may look at it, but I don't keep it.
Well, in the final report, the commissioner report, you'll have all of those components should be as part of the commissioner report.
I understand, but I mean, the building department doesn't take that report.
Some building departments will want that, the report, it depends on the building department, some say we don't have the room to store all these, but there's minimum items that get to be submitted to the building departments, and they're all specified in here, what gets submitted to the building department, and during what phases, you know, design phase or
The idea
construction.
behind commissioning, especially in these larger buildings, is the owner of that building then can monitor the performance of that building over time. I mean, that's the intent. So he's gonna want to have that stuff, the operations manuals and personnel information, that all has to go with the building to be part of the life of that building. So, yeah, I mean, some jurisdictions will want a copy of the report for verification, but I could see with storage issues and just size, capacity, that they probably won't want to maintain those. They're gonna verify that the contractor has completed it based on the requirement, and then the
yeah.
owner will take it from there.
Or they might, you know, they may want those in, you know, in a disk, you know, a PDF format, whatnot. Continuing on with commissioning, the commissioning plan, this basically gives you all of the really all the requirements that are, should be included in the commissioning plan. As you can see here, it says, prior to permit issuance, commissioning plans shall be completed and documented, and it lists everything that needs to be included in that. So this is what the building department is gonna be checking and making sure that all those reports are done. I'll go over every single one. There's a lot of information there. And like I said, there's minor editorial changes, as you can see here from the strikeout. Basically remove references to some appendix chapters that are no longer applicable down below. Now, if you're getting to a building that is under 10,000 square feet, we're going to be requiring just the basic functional performance testing requirements. So basically, look at your systems, make sure that they're operating as intended, maximum, you know, setting them to set points that get the maximum efficiency out of them. A lot simpler, obviously, than buildings that are 10,000 square feet or over. Once again, we require documentation and training, basically a systems manual that's going to show the end user how to troubleshoot and really how to use that equipment and you know, troubleshoot. So a real good O&M, not an O&M manual, but more of an operations manual. Oh, systems manual. This we got kind of down into the weeds on the system manual documentation. But as you can see here, this is the minimum requirements. You know, you have to include in your site information, site contact, basic operations and maintenance. You talk about your major systems, inventory, maintenance notes. Really a document that you know the building manager is going to be able to use and train his staff on how to properly maintain that new mechanical system. And as you can see here, we just had some minor editorial changes. Systems operation training, I touched that a little bit on that. You know, basically, you got to set a program to train personnel on how to operate that new equipment. Once again, we've got the commissioning report. Testing and adjusting. This is kind of got ahead of myself. If you're have a building under 10,000 square feet, you're just going to do the testing and adjusting of the systems. You know, develop procedures, plan, and on how to properly adjust and test. And it has to have those minimum requirements there. It has to address all those different systems. Procedure, you talk about the procedures, the balancing of the system, the reporting, you know, have to submit to the building department. I'm going kind of fast with this because I have a lot more slides, and I'm trying to, yeah, and there's no changes to that. I'm going in the right direction? Oh, sorry. Looks like we have a dupe here. Okay, so now we get to fireplaces. Basically, there's no change to the fireplace requirements. You know, no, it's all direct vent. There's an allowance here under temporary construction ventilation. We're allowing the HVAC system to be used. temporarily during construction, but then, you know, at the end of, when you're done with the construction, before occupancy, have to change the filters to MERV 8. That's basically the only requirement. But once again, this is going to be required for additions and alterations. Covering of ducts openings, protection of equipment. I think there were some minor editorial changes on that. We are allowing for, yeah, no, that's not the one. Yeah, minor editorial changes.
I had some input on that. The Air Resources Board is pretty heavily involved in the development of the code. And when it comes to the environmental issues, pollutant control, they definitely have a lot to say. They came forward and were concerned about putting some clarifying language in the code on the covering of duct openings to identify how those should be covered and what chemicals and provisions they're supposed to be sealing them against. So they put some clarifying language, or requested that we add clarifying language to it. And so that's what was done for those. And with the idea, again, of just specifying that if you're going to protect it, not only from debris and spackle and paint and things, but you should also be sealing them against water intrusion while they're still in temporary waiting stage for their final connection. So some of those things were added to just identify the types of compounds, and that we wanted to include water as being an item to prevent getting into the systems.
Thank you, Mike. Indoor air quality, which, you know, addresses finished materials and filters. Minor clarifications, we have added some reference standards, and we also made exceptions for those small, high-efficiency ductless units that do not require a MERV 8 on those. Environmental tobacco, this one just adding some clarification language for you know, allowing the local jurisdiction. There might be an ordinance in place, whatever is more restrictive will apply there. A lot of jurisdictions already address how far you have to be away from an opening or entry to be able to smoke. So basically, you know, it's either 25 feet or your local jurisdiction. That's already addressed. A lot of jurisdictions address that already. Indoor moisture control, there's no changes to that. Other than now it's required for additions, alterations. Same thing with minor editorial changes on the indoor air quality for ventilation and CO2 monitoring. Environmental control, exterior noise transmission. There were significant changes to this, and really the changes are to really provide measurable standards that local jurisdictions can actually test for. So we really modified that portion of the code. We aligned it with HCD, and then did a performance and prescriptive methods for that. Now under interior sound, minor editorial changes. Outdoor air quality, there was no changes to that. Ozone depleting chemicals, it's been banned for a long time. Just want to make sure that they're not being used in buildings. And all these changes are for additions and alterations as well. Now I'm going to get into basically the non-residential appendix chapters, the REACH standards we've been talking about. And really, you know, these are for local jurisdictions that want to exceed Cal Green's minimum code requirements, especially in this coastal areas. A lot of the jurisdictions, you know, have been using sustainable point-rated systems. This allows those jurisdictions to really take the code to the next level and apply some of these tier 1 or tier 2 requirements to get them to align maybe with existing programs that they have. But basically, Cal Green Tier 1, just backing up, this is for local building departments, but it could be a building owner who says, hey, I want to design my building to a Tier 1 requirement. Even if they're in their jurisdiction not enforcing or requiring Tier 1, they could certainly do that voluntarily. Anyway, Cal Green, we talked about Tier 1, Tier 2. You know, it's basically, it's going to help local jurisdictions meet these greenhouse gas reduction general plan measures that are being used. Now, how to comply, basically to achieve a tier 1 and a tier 2, first you have to meet all the mandatory requirements of chapter 5, and then additionally, you have to exceed the energy code, your energy calc. For a tier 1, it has to be 15%, and then 30% for tier 2. And then also employ these elective measures at the end of in the appendix chapters. We have elective measures that you get to choose, so we make allowances for that. But you'll see that we added these voluntary measures to certain, only certain portions of Calgreen that we could make more restrictive. So you'll see we addressed clean air vehicle parking, cool roofs. We talked about indoor water use, construction waste diversion, recycled content, resilient flooring. These are the ones that we've made more restrictive via this tier 1, tier 2. And so basically to achieve a tier 1, you're going to have to meet all the mandatory requirements, meet your 15% energy calculation, and then go five electives. You get to choose 5 electives to achieve a tier 1, 15 electives to achieve a tier 2. Obviously, tier 2 is a lot more restrictive. I think there's only 4 jurisdictions in the entire state that have adopted a tier 2. And then we also have these application checklists that basically put this in a checklist form, and you'll see in that form it says these are mandatory. Tier 1 has check boxes there, so you can see what is mandatory, what's voluntary for tier 1, and voluntary for tier 2. This is what the form looks like. It's readable. Yeah. So what you can see here, we've got the categories, we've got all the 5 divisions that we talk about, and then we talk about what the mandatory measures are in the second column. Then you get to the tier 1 column, and you'll see the items that we were talking about. We're talking about, 10% instead of 5% for clean air vehicle parking. We're now ramping it up to 10 for tier 1, 12 for tier 2. We introduced cool roofs. So for tier 1, it's requiring to use cool roofs. And then in this planning design category, you notice that we've allowed for 1 elective. So those 5 electives, we tell you can't just randomly pick where those electives are. You have to pick them from that respective category. So you'll see under planning and design, you get to choose 1 elective. But if you look at the code, there's a lot of electives that you could choose. So we're telling you what division to pull it from, but we're also giving you options in the appendix chapter. And then, for example, we talked about energy efficiency. You have to be 15% above your energy code for tier 1, 30% for tier 2. Under water efficiency, you'll see we got, then we talk about outdoor water use, 60%. And yeah, that looks like a 60 now. And then at that point, we allow you another elective under that division A53, construction waste reduction. We've increased it to 65% and then 80%. So you can see here from the table how you can achieve a Calgreen tier 1 using those elective measures. And just as a simple example, so for example, in chapter 5 is the mandatory requirements. You'll see that that same code section is duplicated in the voluntary, but we've added an A in front of it to show that it's an appendix chapter and to show you that that's one of the voluntary measures. So from here, you'll see that we went with construction waste reduction. We talked about 50%, and then the second down below, you'll see tier 1 being at 65, and tier 2 is 80%. This is how it shows up in the code. We just put them in one slide for just for as an example. And then how they show up in the table is you'll see here. This is the table I was talking about, checklist. You'll see what all the mandatory requirements are in the left column, and then the tier 1, you'll see how the 65% gets checked, or tier 2 would be your 80%. So this is how you apply those checklists. Yes.
So this all looks familiar. Is this all current stuff, right?
Yeah, this is all part of the 2010.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is all. We did make some amendments. I think this, some of the voluntary changes, and they're all in the supplement. Additionally, just to kind of put everybody at ease, we have a Calgreen non-residential guide this is the one that International Code Council published, but it's basically we created the guide, they just published it. But you can go online and download the entire guide. You can actually download the entire CalGreen code. You can download the entire CalGreen non-residential guide with the 2010 July 1 supplements in it. Gentleman there has already printed it out. So if you just go out to our website, you can download the entire guide book, and it already has included all of the July 1 supplement changes. And of course, you can also go to our website and download the commissioning guide, and anything that we developed in California is free, available as a free download. Proposed regulations, basically now we're in what we call the triennial code adoption cycle. We're looking at the 2012 model codes and started to make or propose changes, amendments to those codes. And in June we'll be receiving those proposed changes from the different state agencies that have authorities for different occupancies in California, and we'll be running them through the rulemaking code adoption cycle, code advisory committees, and 45-day comments. So that's where we're headed. And so new to this, will be the 2014 effective date of the new codes, of 2013 California codes, is this gray water and rainwater catchment standards that we've had already sent out our second draft. So we're putting this into the codes now. For housing community development, they had created Chapter 16A. They're modifying that, and we're jointly working on that to adopt the Uniform Plumbing Code, which will be Chapter 16 for gray water, that will include res and non-res provisions. And then separately, Chapter 17 is a rainwater catchment. And the HCD and BSC are working closely on that. So that'll be coming forth for the 2013 California build or plumbing code in that case. Codes Online, basically, we have a new website. A few folks have been to our website a couple years ago. It was really difficult to navigate. We've worked, to come up with a better website. Mike was instrumental in developing a new website that was easy to navigate through. And you'll see here we've added these tabs for rulemaking, code cycles, current codes. All those will be banners that you can quickly go to and gets you quicker links to the information that you need. Here's what our new website looks like. At the top you'll see, if you want to know about codes, click on codes, and it'll take you to the 2010 codes that are linkable to the respective websites, ICC or IATMO or NFPA for electrical. If you want to know about, what we're doing, education, or on the left-hand side, if you want to know, like our noticing, what notices we're putting out, go to the notice section in our bulletin, so you can, stay up to date with everything that BSC is doing. We have a direct link to CalGreen. If you click on that CalGreen tab under featured links, it'll take you to CalGreen code that you can download, the guide, the commissioning. We've also provided a link to, on the residential side, HCD did residential low-rise guidebook that you can also download from there. So it's a really valuable tool. Let's see, databases. If you want to be added to our database and are, let's say, interested in what BSC is doing or what HCD is doing or DSA, you can download a form and pick what you want to be noticed on, and we'll customize for you. We'll put you in the appropriate database based on that form. And is there anything else you want to add to, Mike?
The notices portion of the featured links is one of the important features. That's what really triggers everything we do, is we send out a notice to let you know that something's going to occur and it's going to be happening at a given time. We're required by law to do that at least 10 days ahead of meetings and activities. And in the past, the notices were buried in the rulemaking pages, and unless you really knew what you were looking for, it was kind of hard to find, so you had to rely on, hopefully you'll get an email to let you know. Well, now you can monitor those yourself by going right to the featured links, hit on notices, anything that is current and that will be coming up and is going out for notice will be on that page, as well as in the rulemaking sections of the site as well. But it's a quicker access to the activities that the commission is involved in on a regular basis. And Enrique mentioned the database. Best way to get information about what we do is just get in the database, and you'll get electronic blasts on all of our activities as they come up.
Yeah, and additionally, we have a feedback tab that you can click and give us your feedback. We want to know whether it's about our website or anything else. And certainly give us a call. I wouldn't say one of the, our policy is to answer the phone. So if you call, we will answer the phone. And we don't like to let it ring more than twice. So, but certainly give us a call if you have any questions, whatever it may be. We'd like to hear from everybody. Yes, question?
Actually, I was commenting on your site. It
Yes.
is much better than before.
Oh,
I was
good.
able
Glad to
to
hear it.
find what I needed on your website easy,
Good.
compared to before. But actually, my main reason of coming, to this workshop is I'm trying to get more information. How to enforce efficient and alterations. As of
Okay.
right now, I still have a problem, so I
Okay.
have questions to ask.
Okay.
Okay, if you base on valuation of $500,000, and if someone were to just to do operation of the big auditorium, okay? So what are the items that they have to comply with calculating? I mean, I'm seeing, water efficiency, they're not doing bathrooms, they're not doing any of those, they're no kitchen, so do they have to comply with that? And I'm seeing weather resistance and moisture, they're not doing anything to the exterior of the building.
Right.
I mean, and a list of those things. So what is the intent? What do the applicants have to comply?
I would say that they would apply with the portions of Division of 5.7 that are applicable to what they're doing. So if a code section doesn't apply, then it's, it doesn't apply. You see what I'm saying? So let's say they're doing an alteration, but they're not redoing the restrooms. Well, then obviously the indoor water use wouldn't be come into play. So you have to look at what are in that Division 5% and what is applicable to that project, to what they're doing. So it really depends on what they're going to be
So
doing.
they don't touch that area of the
Right, if they don't touch, it's just kind of like what we do now. Our codes are, the building stays with the code it was permitted under until you issue a permit. Now you issue a permit, some jurisdictions say, well, now, okay, we're gonna do some minor code, ADA code, accessibility upgrades, 10% or whatever it is. So that's where the local jurisdictions come in and say, we're gonna take that and use that as a vehicle to update that portion of the building. But that doesn't mean that you go and revamp the entire house or commercial structure. It's really intended to be, if you're touching it, then you're gonna make it comply with current code.
Let me give you another example.
Uh-huh.
We do have a lot of projects in our area where they use very heavy equipment and the machinery
Yeah,
very expensive. It can be $1 million of just adding machinery. So they're not doing anything
right.
to the building. So does that mean that they don't have to do anything in compliance with code?
My question would be how do you address additions and alterations sans CalGreen? How do you normally evaluate that project assuming CalGreen didn't exist? How would you normally go about
I just
administering?
go along with the evaluation of the projects.
Okay.
We go with evaluation.
So, I mean, it's got to be really up to the local building official to make that determination. I know sometimes if you have let's say an Intel fab and you're moving new equipment, does that mean you're gonna, fix the whole structure? That's gonna be a call that the locals are gonna have to make, I think. We're kind of silent on that, but maybe it's something that needs to be clarified.
So the answer is if they're not touching that part of the building,
Right,
and they don't have to do it.
right, because it's not part of the alteration. Now, additions are easy, right? If you're adding 2,000 square feet, everything there has to comply to CalGreen, but it might be that only certain portions of the site, under site development. I mean, it depends on what's there. If it's, it's really a case-by-case basis. So certain parts of the, of the outdoor CalGreen portions may not apply because they don't have that condition. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but there are other things, say, environmental comfort.
Yeah.
I mean, you can apply to anything, any project. So
Yeah, that has to do with like, your noise and your mechanical systems with, earth
So what do
and
you ask them to comply,
Well, when you look at that portion of the code, it's gonna be very specific. If you're putting materials, they have to be low VOC, they have to meet the requirements in those tables. So it's really specific in, if you look at Division 857, it's gonna tell you exactly what you need to comply with. Some of those things may not apply because they're not doing that, you know, something that would trigger that as part of that alteration. Like I said, once again, like restrooms, they're not doing restrooms, and you can't obviously force them to comply and fix the restrooms on the other side of the building. You know, that's not the intent of Cal Green. It's to reduce the impact of new, or in this case, alterations into the built environment. And that's usually whatever you're touching, it has to comply with current code, which would be this additions and alterations.
So the key is you leading up to local jurisdiction to make a determination, not necessarily once when they reach $500,000 evaluation.
Right.
Then they have to do all of
I would say I would follow the same process and procedures and protocol that you have now with your build normally, and you're gonna be safe. I mean, we're not gonna say, hey, you know, local jurisdiction, you're doing this incorrectly. I would say keep within your process and what you normally do and how you run your building department. I think, Mike, would you say that's a general statement? Yeah. Yeah. Yes?
Is there a fine associated with the fuel efficient vehicle parking similar to?
No, there's no placards, there's no tollway signs. This is really it's basically, imagine this like a carpool, you know, or a visitor parking. I mean, an employee should not park in the visitor parking, and, you know, shame on them if they do. Same thing with this cleaner vehicle. It's really as an incentive for people that have decided to make that step in the right direction and be more, you know, environmentally friendly. Give them an option to be able to have a space that they can park. It's more of an incentive, but we're not really even defining where it can be. It can be around the, you know, it doesn't have to be like an ADA stall in front of the building. It could be anywhere on site, as long as you provide the appropriate spaces based on your parking requirements.
I'm wondering too, because if I kind of designated a special area for fuel efficient vehicles now, does that trigger some of those spaces have to be accessible?
No. Definitely not. I mean, we're not saying it has to be, you have to have a cleaner vehicle and it has to be ADA compliant.
I think one of the things I would say kind of related to that, which is an interesting set of circumstances that have come up, is EV charging is becoming a real big thing now too. In fact, the governor's office is, you know, asking the agencies to move forward, develop those requirements, or working through different groups in the governor's office to develop ways to streamline the permitting process for PDs and for charging stations and the like. And that came up as a question and said, okay, well, if you're going to require EVs, charging stations in, say, a commercial facility, what about the accessibility? If you don't put one there, then you're discriminating against the accessibility community because they can't park in a regular stall and charge. They have to have charging in their stalls too. So that shows you how they can start to interact with each other, and one can impact the other. So EV charging may become more of a requirement in the future, where they're going to require you to have so many stalls or spaces available for EV. And included in that, it may come out that one or more of the accessible stalls need to also have that. But that's not a decision yet, it hasn't happened, but that gives you an idea how that's going to
Understanding that it is.
For statewide application for EV
Charging, yet you have to have at least 1 in 8 right now. It has to be accessible, and that's more enforcement.
No, is that in via legislation? Certainly not in the code.
If you provide it, then you've got to make one for accessible.
What I'm saying is it's not a building standard.
It's
It's not in the code yet.
You're saying it's not applicable to 11.
Oh, 11B. Oh, I see. As a.
If you provide electric
Oh,
charging,
okay.
don't worry about it for 11.
No. It's if it's an 11B, it's accessibility. Yeah.
Yeah, if you're putting in 11B, I'm not that familiar with
Yeah.
it.
DSA put it in there. I don't even know.
But my point
Let's see.
was that that's the kind of circumstance that will trigger other requirements
Yeah.
that maybe weren't anticipated.
That's what I'm saying, it could be construed, you guys should create that type of circumstance, because 11B says if you designate different type of parking areas, you have to have accessible parking in each of those areas. So now you've designated a special area for fuel efficient vehicles. And if I'm disabled, I want one of those parking spaces, 1 out of 8, to be accessible. So,
Yeah. We certainly haven't heard any discussion on that, or we haven't been privy to any conversation that
One thing,
that they're concerned about that.
one thing on the accessibility, not to get too far off track here, but DSA is going to be rewriting Chapter 11B in its entirety this cycle. They're basing it on the new ADA requirements that came effective March 15th of this year. And they're going to use that as a base, similar to the way we use the model codes as a base and then we amend. So they're going to use that as a base and they're going to amend. And I believe starting this month, I think 23rd or 25th, I can't remember, there is their first workshop. And they're going to start to attach or attack each of the divisions of the ADA and how it's chaptered out into 10 different chapters. And they're going to be addressing each one of those in work groups to try to see what they can move in and what they need to amend to keep the stringency level in California where everybody wants it. So we're not reducing the accessibility requirement, but incorporating all the Fed steps so that we're in complete, hopefully, 100% compliance with Feds by the time that's all done, which has always been an issue in California between federal law enforcement and state enforcement. So we'll see where that goes. And related to that, we'll probably see a lot more interaction between EB and the different requirements for that and what the Feds require for the accessibility. Should be
That's one thing it's another boulder creep here because you're providing parking for clean air vehicles with zero emissions. Well, that's BS because those electric vehicles are getting their power from coal-fired, natural gas powered units to the extent of 70% of that power. It's a totally ridiculous requirement. Shouldn't even be on it.
We'd love to get comments from the public for that purpose because, you know, we can get a lot of support, but until we get those comments to tell us the other side of the story, then, you know, it's hard for us to address those provisions. So those are the kind of things we need to hear as well. And it's important input, you know, we have to be able to get all sides of the story.
Myron, we certainly, you know, would like your input. You know, like I said, get involved in the process, and you can certainly come to any of those stakeholder meetings that we have, and your voice will be heard. You'll have an opportunity to talk in front of code advisory committees or the different state agencies that are proposing that. Certainly come and, you know, give us your input. Okay, thank you. Yes.
So the DSA has clarified the guidelines for electric vehicles, and those parking spaces are not accessible parking spaces. They're charging stations.
Right.
And their interpretive regulation is very clear about that it does not need to be striped. The equipment, the maneuvering clearances need to be maintained for accessibility.
And
But it's not a parking space, it's a charging space.
Got it.
That's,
And that's probably how they're getting around it. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification. Yes.
One more question on there's nothing in the code here that says what you do if you make a mistake. For example, paint, VOC, adhesives, VOC, it's installed.
Yeah.
What would you like me to do, Bruce?
You know what? Osama Union, I'll steal this from him because he said it publicly. And Osama Union is the kind of building official in the CLA. He basically gave his opinion, and might be something that other building officials, you know, might use. But he was saying, you know, they encounter those situations. It's already painted. They got the wrong paint. You know, it doesn't meet the VOC limits, and so what he was suggesting is, if that happens, then there's trade-offs. Maybe they have to go do something else as part of the permit. You know, that's kind of become something that you will have to work out with the contractor. Would you go and repaint it with low VOC? Obviously not, right? So those issues you guys are gonna have to address that, and the building official is authorized by law to, you know, to interpret and make more specific where the code's not specific, and that also applies to Cal Green. So, you know, it's in the health and safety code. Building official can make those interpretations as to how they want to address kind of those particular situations. Yes.
You mentioned the 2013 code talk about the wastewater.
Yes.
Rainwater catchment.
Yes.
I wonder if there is a consideration or exception in there. I was thinking both the wastewater and the rainwater catchment in the local agency here create a lot of problem for us. Let's use the example as the wastewater. The wastewater system, I understand is you need a pipe the wastewater release into the yard at some point or time.
Yes.
Not really collect and use it. Well, the agency already have the recycle water system. They're taking the wastewater is
anticipated issues
Yeah.
of people wanting to be more efficient.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that becomes, way I was thinking, if people already also they are using recycled water, how we cannot provide recycled water resource because we dump the gray water away. And the quality of our recycled water is harder even to treat. So that's the first thing I was thinking, if you consider any exception if the agency or some region already use recycled water, have the recycled water system. Maybe it's the exception, you don't need to do the gray water system.
Yeah, and the gray water provisions are they're voluntary, they're not mandatory. So to do gray water, it is not necessarily gonna be a requirement, but if you do choose so, then we set the requirements for it, the standards. And the same thing for rainwater.
For rainwater catchment, our region is you can catch some amount of rainwater when you don't really need the irrigation because the rain is wet.
Right.
Wet. And when the season here, when the summertime is no rain, there's
Yeah.
nothing for you to collect. Why you get a bucket there trying to collect water, you create what else has there?
Yeah.
The water quality, you can't save the winter time water go to the summertime to use. There's no rain during the summertime.
Yeah, and so for rainwater catchment, we're allowing a 5,000 gallon containment. So we've modified, the Uniform Plumbing Code had a 360 gallon requirement to issue, a trigger a permit. We made it to 5,000 gallons, so for situations like that where you can actually collect it.
And
store it.
related to that, they are aware that standing bodies of water will have pathogens and other issues. So there's a certain level of treatment that's required, as you contain the water. The idea also is the concern about how much paving and non-permeable coverage we have on the grounds, preventing the recharge of groundwater systems. So capturing some of that and using it on site can also help the recharge for those areas that are currently not getting that water. There are good aspects to rainwater capture, and there are some problems with it too. So it's a new, for us, it's a new issue. It's going to be part of our rulemaking process. It's going to be looked at extensively over the next few months and proposed to be added to the code in the next cycle. So I would say I'd like to hear your input at those meetings, even by email or voicemail. Send us the information, get it to us so we can take your perspective in consideration and make sure that everybody's considering that. Because that's not the first time I've heard the unanticipated event of everybody putting these systems in and then reducing the amount of water that then goes through the sewer systems and public systems, causing problems, like you said, at the recycle plant.
But certainly give us your card, and I could forward the second draft of the proposed changes.
Good
If
idea.
you want to look at them, certainly we'd like your input. Okay, thank you. Looks like we're done. Good crowd. Thank you for staying awake after lunch. It's a tough
Good
one.
questions.
And good questions.
That's good.
Like I said before, thank you, Kara and Susan, for inviting us here. It's really been a pleasure. Some of the stuff is pretty dry, but we try to give as much information as possible given the time constraints. So thank you very much on behalf of me and Mike. Thank you.